admissions letter, letter of recommendation, and we'll submit it, straight to the UCLA #1 film school. And I was like, oh, sweet. And I remember there was like, you'll get in. And I just remember getting this really thin envelope that summer said, like, you're rejected. We're not taking you. I was like, what? And so I spent that summer just like, what am I gonna do? I was getting really nervous because I didn't want to be like just kind of unemployed that summer and that year. So I ended up looking Craigslist, and they had a job that it was like for a ad agency. I was like, oh, that sounds kind of fun. And they were like, we specialize in kid food products. I'm like, oh, that sounds really fun. And I applied to that. It was called Dupuy, the group. They're up in Ventura, and they are a branding and design agency. And I worked there for 3 years doing a lot of kids packaging, like ice cream and Nestle candy and Nerds. I remember Nerds, Willy Wonka. I did that. And during that time, that was around, I think, 2005, there was this toy that came out that like all the people were getting. It was called the Bratz doll. And I found out that they were, I was living in LA, and I found out the company that makes the Bratz dolls was like just a few miles. And I was like, they're looking for a packaging designer. I was like, hey, I did packaging at Dupuy. I'm gonna go see if I can get a job over there. And they hired me. So I worked on the little Bratz dolls for a little bit doing the packaging. And then I got transferred to Little Tykes, and I was working on more packaging for that. And then I then went to another toy company called Spin Master, and they had the #1 boys toy action figure at the time. It was called Bakugan. It's like a little ball that pops open and becomes a robot, which is so funny because this was, that was like 2008, I think. And like, it was so hot, and then it kind of died off. But just like last year, I went to Target, and it's like on the shelf again, and it's still really popular. And I said, that was cool. So all the while I'm doing my day job, I was always drawing my own characters and doing my own thing. I had wonderful friends that would invite me to partake in art shows. I remember I have a really good friend named Cooper, and he always does these cool art shows for his birthdays that are like charity art shows. And he invited me to do one, and I just remember selling my first art piece at art show, and it was like such a tremendous feeling, like, hey, maybe I can do this on my own, like maybe I can survive on just my art. So I quit Spin Master in like 2011, I think, and I was like, I'm just gonna draw monkeys and make monkey toys and sell them, and I'm gonna be like rich and famous. And that like worked for like not even 3 months. I was like, oh my god, how am I gonna eat? Where am I gonna live? So luckily, I had built enough contacts through the years that they were offering me freelance. And then, I've been doing that for about 8 years, freelance. And what's great about it is now that I'm able to kind of, people see my style, the Hyperactive Monkey stuff that I do on the side, and they see it and they want to hire me to kind of execute that style for their toy line or their projects. So that's like my quick super where I am right now. Hopefully that was like 5 minutes or less.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I definitely have a lot of questions for you about like partnerships and things, which we can get into later. But I love that you mentioned that you started with food packaging, because I feel like a lot of your toys also are like food takes of things.
I know. I think that's so subconscious. I was thinking about the other day. I was like, yeah, there's got to be some connection there.
Like you didn't even realize that you were doing that. That's funny. Okay. All right. So thank you so much. And I know these are like really brief snapshots, but I'll also start putting links in the chat so y'all can also check out their work. Okay, so next I will go to Addi. Addi, do you want to kind of share a little bit of your background and how you got into this?
Yeah. Apologies in advance. My dog is now awake and being vocal, so you may hear him in the background. I've been doing art my entire life. As soon as I was old enough to hold the crayon, I was drawing. And I'm very lucky that my family is very supportive of the arts in general. Art was just always a part of my life. And it was always known Addi is going to be an art major in school at the very least. I didn't go to art school, although I did apply to several and got into several. I ended up just going to like a liberal arts university because after going to tours on art campuses, I remember thinking to myself, I don't feel like I fit in here. Like I draw, I like to draw, but I don't feel like I fit in. I can't picture myself being on campus here. And a big part of who I am is my heritage, especially on my Japanese side. And a big goal of mine was to get better at Japanese since my family had pretty much lost the language. And none of these schools had any kind of language program. So I ended up going to my university and was able to do like the double. I had the major in art and a minor in Japanese. Got to study abroad. Part of studying abroad, I got to be in Tokyo, and I got to see a lot of really incredible fashion illustration out there. To backtrack a little, when I was in high school, I thought I wanted to be a fashion designer, and I quickly realized that was not what I wanted to do when I started touring all of the art campuses. So I saw a lot of really cool illustration in Japan. I took a course that was focused on Chinese and Japanese ink painting and learned a lot from that, and definitely influenced my work moving forward. And then for my senior year, came back to California and was like really behind compared to my peers. Like all of them were really good at painting, and I was just very, very behind. But my one advantage was that I was the only one who knew how to do ink painting, like in the sumie style. So I was able to hopefully impress my professors in that sense. And then it was 2010, I graduated, and it was the recession. And I was a person with a degree in art and a minor in Japanese. And I thought, you know what, I just need health insurance. So I just gotta find it. I just gotta find something where I can be sure that I'm covered. And so I was working part-time in just retail store in the mall, and they said, hey, did you know that you only need a 4-year degree to join the manager training and become a manager? And I went, sure, health insurance, full-time, you got it. And so I worked in retail for about 2 years, and 2 or 3 years. And I did not create any art during that time. I had like a complete art drought, and it was honestly probably the most miserable that I had ever been. I was on my feet 13, 14 hours a day. I never knew my schedule week to week. I couldn't see my friends. Some days I wasn't getting home until like 3 a.m. And I was just exhausted, and there was nothing left in me to actually make art. And I was very fortunate that my boyfriend was working for a tech company at the time, and they had an opening for a receptionist. And I thought, hey, I'm good at customer service. I'm sure I could translate that to sitting at a front desk. So interviewed, got the job, and maybe 2 years into working at this tech company, I started feeling that energy come back. Like, oh, I really want to create again. I miss drawing. There's such a gaping hole in my life, and I think it's because I'm not drawing as much anymore. So I challenged myself to just do a doodle every day. It didn't have to be a like fine art masterpiece. And I would just post it on Instagram, mostly just to share, but also in a way to hold myself accountable, because then all my friends knew that I was supposed to do a doodle a day. And those doodles very quickly snowballed into, picking up my watercolors again. I'm self-taught in watercolor. It's a lot like sumie in many ways. And that kind of gathered momentum till I was doing commissions just for my friends' pet portraits, and then coming up with characters on my own. And much like Jerome, I had friends who were just really sweet, and anytime they caught wind of an art show, they would send it my way and say, "Hey, I think you should apply, or you should submit your work and see if you can make it." I'd say by about 2017, 2018 was when things really took off. 2018 was my first Kickstarter, and that was such a learning experience for me. Doing Silicon Valley Comic-Con, art walk, craft fairs, having my stuff up in just like coffee shops and things. And now 2020, I just finished my second Kickstarter, or rather that was more like August. I wrapped up everything for that Kickstarter. Didn't think I could pull that off in a pandemic, but it actually worked out really, really well. So that's where I am now.
Awesome. And I think you had your little project there. Do you want to show?
I did. Yeah. So the first Kickstarter that I mentioned was for those who are not familiar with tarot decks. I did what's called a majors only version of the tarot, which is just 22 cards. Yeah, itty bitty one right there. So that was in 2018. The traditional tarot decks have both the major and minor arcana, and of course, everyone was asking me, when's the minor coming? Are you going to do it? When's it coming out? So I spent all of 2019 painting the remaining 56 cards, which took me a long time, and then launched the complete Botan Tarot on Kickstarter earlier this year, and it was a really, really great experience. I did not expect the reception that it received. So yeah, it's my baby.
Awesome. And I think you have images on your website if anybody's interested in looking at them, and you showed some of those images at the library. So
I did.
great. Awesome. And also, if it helps, I graduated with a business major in 2008 and also had nowhere really to go because of the recession. So, and I was in retail management and retail for like 6 years. I don't know if we've ever talked about that. So later. Okay. So Angie, we would love to hear a little bit about your business. Angie founder, owner of Bobo Design Studio, and we'd love to hear a little bit more. Let's see here. Make sure I'm spotlighting videos correctly. All right.
Hi.
Yes. Hi. Yeah, if you want to share a little bit about your journey into how you created your business or got into this and made it your full thing.
Yeah. Well, first of all, hella impressed. I have major imposter syndrome when I hear Jerome talk about his experience and when I hear Addi talk about her experience, and it's like I'm very honored to be in the likes of the two of them. But hi everyone. I'm Angie Chua. I'm the founder, heart and soul of Bobo Design Studio, and I design and create wanderlust inspired stationery and travel accessories that encourage and enable people to go out and explore the world around them. I totally know that is not happening right now in this pandemic, but I've got a great community that's continuing to support me. So that's really awesome. On top of that, I'm also a freelance and professional hand lettering artist and illustrator. So I primarily work with other businesses and do design work for anything from retail spaces to large art installations, licensed artwork, which just basically means that people pay me to doodle, which is pretty darn cool. I like to call myself a fartist, which is a fake artist, because I, unlike our other esteemed colleagues on this panel, did not go to art school. I barely survived school. I had a very late diagnosis in my adult life for ADHD, which really just explained my inability to do anything in a classroom for my entire life. So, I definitely did not get into any school of choice, let alone wanted to go to school. So I'm a completely self-taught doodler and self-taught artist. And the running joke is like, Angie, that's so cool. Like, you're just breaking all the rules. And I was like, I don't even know what the rules are. So, just a little bit of heart, a little bit of passion, and a lot of grit. You can do some really amazing things out there. But my journey into this business is kind of by accident. I think when you talk with a lot of other makers and artists and designers, their story is very similar to mine. They have this creative side of them. They have this full-time job that sucks the life out of them. And then they decide they're going to make this thing as a gift. And people are like, hey, that's cool, you should sell it. And you're like, okay. And so then you do, and you're like, I guess I have a business now. So that's pretty much kind of like how I started. What I have now is this stationery business. But when I got into the kind of like hobby business world, I was actually creating handcrafted bags. And so I was, schlepping my stuff at 5 a.m. to go to farmers markets. Those people were not my people. Like, they weren't buying from me, but, I would just hit every show that I could. And I would just, burn the candle on both ends, because I had this really demanding job in brand advertising for 10 years. And then I also had this like side hustle. And it kind of all came to a head in 2017. I was at a point in my career where I could continue, working my way up this ladder and never be home. I was already on the road, probably 2 to 3 weeks out of every month traveling. And I just was kind of done with that. And I felt like I needed to find myself again. And so I thought, I'm just going to try and make this Bobo thing happen, because, if it doesn't work out, like, I'll just go back into the workforce. Like, what's wrong with that? And so I did. I quit my job and decided, with like almost no plan, that I was going to run Bobo. And about 3 months in, I pretty much almost lost all the money that I had saved, and was fully regretting every decision that I had made, and thought I had ruined my life. And a lot of amazing things happen in this like dark despair place. And I think like the true mark of an artist is to like find the silver lining in all the pain and destruction that might be like in your path. And I feel like I had this sink or swim moment, and I really like doubled down and started to take the business a lot seriously. I hired help as much as I could. And now I have this incredible little growing business, and a lot of hurdles along the way, but it was definitely probably the one most rewarding and incredible experience that I've done with my life. And mind you, I did that at the age of 36. I'm 39 now. I'm going to be 40 soon. And, you hear a lot of really great stories about like the people who are, the hot makers of the 30 under 30, but no one really talks about like the old ass people who kind of put their lives up, pick them up by the bootstraps, and like start over with almost nothing, with no resources, with no education. And I was definitely one of those people.
I'd like to say 36 is an old ass, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, 40 is the new 20.
Yes,
and
exactly.
70 is the new 30. So
yeah. Thank you. And something very exciting is Angie was just on a panel for Paper Source, and I believe some of your items were on the Paper Source website, which is huge.
Yeah, I had a couple big wins. I worked with Paper Source Corporate in their first ever PlannerCon event. And then my workshop was like the highest rated workshop, which was very, very cool. I was I got to work with some of the people that like I admire the most in like kind of the stationery and lettering world. And now, they carry my products in their stores. So
that's amazing. That's so awesome. Oh, I need to go to a Paper Source and look. And Angie also did a workshop for us. So if you want to see that workshop, I think it's on Facebook in our live section. Okay, so I did want to talk to all of you also about, and I'm gonna put us in a gallery view. If y'all could explain some of the logistics of getting started, especially when you're worried about investing too much money. And if money has to be spent, what do you think is worth the investment? And then Jerome, I think you're also coming at it, you also came at it having all this like industry experience and then being able to freelance, which is so awesome, but I'm sure that still requires startup costs. So I'd be really interested to hear from any of you, whoever wants to speak.
I think, a good thing, where to start is like Angie and Addi were saying, is I remember, when I really committed to Hyperactive Monkey, I did 1 year of where I'm going to hit every single California, like Northern Bay Area, within driving distance of each other, convention. Like, even if they didn't seem like a good fit, I would just like, okay, I'm going to do Unique LA, like, Renegade Craft Fair. And I knew they, might not be a good fit, but you kind of got like an idea of what your audience was. The funny thing is, like, I kind of went into Hyperactive Monkey, like, I'm going to be like this hip street apparel company. So like that's my early t-shirt designs were like these kind of robot anime kind of things. And what I noticed was like just going to like we did Anime Expo for quite a few years, is like a lot of little kids were like, do you have anything for us, like little kids stuff? And then so that kind of like, oh, maybe I'm doing the wrong market or the wrong kind of crowd. It's maybe something for younger, and that's actually what we cater to now, is a lot of the younger kids. I think it's just the number one thing is kind of find out who your audience is, while, trying to keep true to yourself and what you want to do. But I think that was kind of the first thing. And that is an investment, is like the con price to get a booth at a con. But I feel like that's almost one of the most valuable, is that, what's hit or miss. And then from there you can kind of, put, your money where you need to, and like invest it in the products that might be more, popular and kind of more success.
And with yours, I mean, the cost of production too, or I mean, I imagine that's just like so different, or I imagine it varies quite a bit. Although I know, like Angie, you also have pins and like apparel and things like that. And then Addi, you've got, something like a tarot deck, and then, you're getting jackets and painting them. So, how are you dealing with the best way to actually invest in materials, or are you doing things first, like using like Redbubble or Society6 or something?
So I can speak a little bit to like the manufacturing process. So when you're thinking about starting your business, well, first of all, one of the best quotes I've ever heard is, if you want $1 million business, start with $2 million, because you will, a business is designed to lose money. It's designed to have overhead, and where you make up for it is like, how do you drive the revenue to offset those costs? And it takes a really long time to kind of figure that out. And part of losing money in a business isn't about losing money. It's about making as many mistakes as you can so that you can learn from them. And I think sourcing for manufacturing and learning the language around what materials you need, trying to explain what your vision is for product when you're working with other vendors, trying to find vendors, and then aligning your values with those vendors. Like, if you only want to be in the US, like, how do you find US based vendors versus, maybe you want to outsource to like Taiwan. So just kind of understanding, like, what is your business about? What is your budget like? And then kind of working backwards, because there's so much cool stuff that you can really get lost in and get so excited and like dive head first. And then you don't have a business even before it launches, and you've spent like thousands and thousands of dollars. So I think even before the manufacturing process begins, you really got to understand, like, what is it that you want to create? What do you want the value system for your brand to be, and how do you align that with your manufacturing process or the products that you want to create? And then my number one tip too is, don't do it alone. Like, being an entrepreneur is like the loneliest place in the whole wide world, because nobody in your friend group really knows what you're going through. And there's a lot to be said about like not reinventing the wheel. So join a lot of networks, join a lot of Facebook business groups, especially ones that are maybe in the same industry, because people are really happy to share their experiences, share vendor resources, share references. And that's really like a good way to kind of get started. And then of course, always ask for samples.
I wanted to sort of tail off of that and kind of emphasize the work smarter, not harder. In that first year, you are going to make a lot of, you're going to take a lot of risks. You're going to try a lot of new things, But like Angie said, someone out there has gone through that before. Someone out there has been in your shoes and is now 2 steps ahead of you. So don't be afraid to reach out to a creator. Obviously, you know, don't just like slide into the DMs and be like, yo, give me all of your vendor contacts. Like, introduce yourself, be professional about it. But a lot of what I learned about just getting through the first 2 years even was just reaching out and being like, excuse me, I really love the quality of your pins. The line work came out really, really nicely. Would it be all right if I ask you who your manufacturer is? I'm looking to design them myself. And I've never had a maker say, no, that's my secret. You can never know. Everyone has been very forthcoming. So if you can save yourself some time and effort and tears on that, what you don't want to ever do is compromise on the product itself, because the product will speak for itself. And if it does, if you have a quality product, but you know, you are able to get that quality product because someone connected you to a manufacturer, and this other person taught you how to, you know, write up a little product story for it, and another person that was a friend of a friend said, hey, I can do product photos, so let me connect you with them. And you know, build your little village of others that can help you out, because at the end of the day, the product is what needs to speak for itself. And that's what you really want to invest in, is the product. And also, I was actually thinking about this. I know my first year, the thing that I wasn't afraid to spend on was stuff that you could sort of capitalize. Like, okay, that paper cutter is kind of expensive, but it's gonna last me several years. So even though it's $100, if it lasted me 5 years, then it's really $20 a year. So that's pretty good. So also, you know, treat yourself to the things that will last a long time for your business.
Cool, thank you. And I guess, you know, for those who like, they're just like, you know what, I don't have very much money to start. What would your advice be?
You know, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, if you have a buddy who has not the exact same products as you, or if you can find someone who their art or their craft complements yours, see if you can share a booth or share a table. I did that the first 3 years, and it makes selling so much more fun because you have a friend that you could talk to, or someone to watch your booth, or if you know someone, if a person coming through is kind of like not leaving you alone or distracting you from your other customers, they can dive in and help out. So that saved me easily hundreds of dollars in booth fees the first couple of years, just because we were splitting the cost. As long as the event allows it, you always have to ask.
Yeah, what Addi said, I remember, you know, in 2009, I think, for my first couple of years doing cons, I was splitting a booth with some other really cool creators, Squid Kid Inc. And regarding, you know, cost, I think, you know, if you're an artist, you know, your art, you know, a painting or a drawing is something that you can have readily available, that you can sell. I remember my first, you know, 2009, I literally just sold postcards that I had gotten printed, you know, and you know, I was just, I think, you know, you can do that now, you know, fairly cheap, you know, get postcards made. I was selling them as art prints, and I think that, you know, I think I spent $100, you know, and I remember, I think I sold like $150 worth. And I was like, I made costs back. And I then invested that like $150 into like doing like a one color silkscreen shirt. And I remember like, oh, you know, I think like Addi and everyone saying, kind of be cost effective and build off, you know, don't reinvent the wheel, kind of start small and then maybe branch out.
Cool, thank you. Angie, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think, you know, as it pertains to my story, like people are always going like, that's so cool, you quit your job and you just started this business, so it must be like awesome. And no, I had to do quite a bit of saving. And my recommendation is, if you have a job, and if you're fortunate to have a job, keep that job for as long as you can. Even if your business is growing and you think you're going to make a living wage, just try and keep that income for as long as you can, especially if you are one of the Bay Area folks here, because it's really, really tough. And there's something that's like glamorous about like quitting your job to be an artist full time, but it's imagine living paycheck to paycheck and like less than that, and then working like, you know, twice as much, 3 times as much. So one, keep your job if you can. And two, if you don't have enough startup costs, there's lots of other options that you can do without having to go to a bank. You can get a Kiva loan, which is a 0% interest crowdfunded loan that you get from your community, which is awesome. I highly recommend Kiva. They're doing really great things. I know Addi also did a Kickstarter, which is another great way to get your idea from concept to like proof to product without having to do a lot of your own saving and investment. So, you know, but if you're really concerned about startup costs and how to get them, try and work as long as you can and save as much as you can. And then, you know, grind.
Awesome. Real talk that we all need.
Yeah.
And then I know we're going to get into some of the less fun things to talk about, but I also think there are things that are really important. And so things like worrying about the rights of the things you create, or, you know, when you are freelancing, the agreements that you're entering or how you're getting these partnerships, like, and, you know, with Jerome, you also end up creating all these toys that like we might not realize you're behind. And then I'll look at your page and be like, oh, he created that Star Wars keychain that I wish I got. Like, there's a lot of things like that happening. But you know, so how are you, one, kind of getting those opportunities or getting into those opportunities, but also what are you looking for in agreements and in making sure that you're protected when you are doing anything involving your business?
For me, a lot of it's work for hire. And I, you know, actually a funny story, like last year I worked on a bunch of Disney product from another company. And I was like, oh, I'm going to showcase this on, you know, my social media. And I did. And like literally within seconds, like, you need to take that down. Like, you cannot show that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it's in your contract. And I had to pull it up. I'm like, what? It's like tiny print. I never read my contracts, you know? And I was like, oh, they're like, yeah, you can't, you know, can't disclose that you worked on any of our projects. And I was like, ah! And so I was like, okay, I pulled it down. But a lot of times, a lot of these projects, just from working in the toy industry, a lot of my friends are now in all these different avenues and in positions where they can, you know, give me work and, you know, freelance. And I for me, that's the tough part is like, oh, I want to draw like Star Wars characters and sell art prints. But the truth of the matter is I work with so many of these companies that have the license and that actually do hire me sometimes to work on Star Wars characters. Then that doesn't allow me to do any fan art that I can sell. You know, it's tough. I can always, you know, draw it and post it, but I just can't make money off of it. So that's why, you know, I focus on my own personal characters and stories. But yeah.
Yeah, I actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I did an artist residency in Iceland, and like I was the farthest, and everyone there was these like super established, very classically trained artists, fine artists and concept artists. And a lot of them were saying that their entire career, they have done amazing projects and been a part of some really incredible teams, and they can't ever talk about any of it. And like, that's got to kill you to like put your heart and soul into a project that like you could never attach your name to, or you can, but you can't like publicly share, like, that's me. So I commend you for going that route. For me, because I do all my own illustrations and lettering, and so there's basically like 3 big areas that people who start a business are typically like kind of have not like a very rough knowledge of, but never actually do anything with it. And it's anything with intellectual property, so IP. So that's trademarks, copyrights, and patents. And so people are really familiar with copyright, which is like music lyrics, for example, or like what Star Wars is doing. Like all that stuff is copyright. They own the rights to that. You can't recreate that. You can't take song lyrics and then make it into art and sell it because those song lyrics belong to somebody else. So that intellectual property is called copyright. Patent is if you have like an idea that's never been thought of. So typically like an invention, for example, that's what you would patent, an invention, or some sort of like technique that you've created. And then there's trademark, which is your name. So like Bobo Design Studio is trademarked. That means nobody else can be Bobo Design Studio in the space that I operate. I also trademark my Wanderlust passport, which is my travel journals that I created. And there isn't supposed to be another Wanderlust passport. But through that process, I actually had another Wanderlust passport try and take my name from me. And it was a very, very costly 1.5 year legal battle. But it taught me something really important in that if you invest in your name, that name will make money for you, whether that means you're taking up space, meaning that no one else can take that name from you, or it prevents other businesses from coming in and trying to use your name, and then you're able to go and kind of stop that. And I think trademark is one of those investments that a lot of up and coming businesses and brands don't think about or don't want to do until it's too late. And you might get sued by another company. You might get a cease and desist letter, and it costs a lot of money. But trademarking your name is one of those things that's a huge investment, but really helps you solidify and take your business seriously.
Yeah, that was my highest cost, like right out the gate, was like, I need a trademark lawyer, and they're like, okay, this is how much it's going to cost you to trademark Hyperactive Monkey, Kung Fu Monkey. I was like, what? There's like no toys in that. Like, what?
Yeah, and hire, if you're gonna do that, get an IP attorney. Don't just get any regular lawyer, because the law for trademark and intellectual property is very, very nuanced. I made the mistake of the second time around thinking like, oh, I've been through this. I'll just hire a normal lawyer because it's way cheaper. And then that's when I ended up getting into quite a bit of legal troubles with that. And I had to kind of work my way out and had to rehire another IP attorney and start the process all over again. So
I'm over here like taking notes because I think I'm a little bit behind in my journey. I'm a few steps late, and I'm just like, okay,
no. It's not about being behind. A lot, I would say 90% of artist-based businesses is just, it's not common knowledge to do those things. And I was really fortunate to have a mentor that really helped me by making every mistake possible. And so I learned so much from her, and she's really helped my business grow. And so those aren't things that I think most people just know about. So if you're out there and you're like, I've been actually doing my business for 10 years and I never even knew what a trademark was, that's super normal. So don't feel like embarrassed about that at all, because it's not intuitive.
Yes. That is definitely one thing that they don't teach you about, whether you go to art school or just like study art in a liberal arts school like I did. I don't think I was ever even really taught how to properly price my work. So I think one of the hardest, like not glamorous things about running the business, including everything that Angie and Jerome have just talked about, is also understanding the various permits and insurances and other like licenses that you need to be allowed to sell in a place. I think I was lucky enough that I like snuck under the radar my first 2 years and got away with not having, it was called a business tax, but it's really just a permit. And oh, sorry, I'm hearing an echo.
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from.
Uh-oh.
Are we good?
You're okay, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, I think I snuck under the radar because I just like wasn't really even selling that much. And then one year I got a letter that said, our records show that you've been selling in the city limits, and since this year. And I was like, oh my God, how did they even know that I was at the one craft fair 3 years ago? And they said, we are doing an amnesty program. If you want to, you know, pay back what you would have owed to have this permit for those years. But we're aware of you now. So that's another really hard thing that I think, you know, having a mentor or, you know, leaning on your fellow makers in the area to just say like, hey, did you have to get a license of some kind to sell within city limits here or within this county? I just want to make sure I'm doing everything right. Because, you know, I truly found out just by accident and stumbling into things. That part I think has been hardest for me, because you can't exactly look that up either. You can't Google, what do I need to be allowed to sell in this city? Because then it gets down to like, well, are you selling at open air events? Are you selling food? Are you selling livestock? Are you selling blah, blah, blah? Where are your goods manufactured? Are you in the military? Are you, and it just gets so confusing. And obviously if you're, the assumption of course is that if you're a maker, like all of these things, that's not what you care about. Those are not the details that you're thinking about. And I know it made my head spin, so.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. So it's like,
Yes.
How do you even search for that? Yeah, and on top of that, I'll never forget when I quit my job and I was like, I'm gonna make all the things and I'm gonna do it and it's gonna be awesome. And then I started working and I was like, okay, making bags, which is what I had started when I had left my job, was like 2% of what I did. It was like researching, like finances, like I have ADHD, me and money are like oil and water. I was like, I just trying to figure out like how to do things. And like another running joke is like, I either owe $300 this quarter or I'm going to jail, because I just did not know any of the paperwork that I was looking at. I didn't understand what I was doing. And I'm like, I'm just going to send this stuff and I'll just wait for them to come and knock on my door. Because if there's one thing the government is really good at, it's like, we want our money. So
Yeah.
I just, yeah, it was kind of this like eye-opening experience that so much of my day-to-day was actually administrative, operational stuff and not the creative making stuff. And I had to kind of learn, you know, trial by fire that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like we do have a question. Someone was asking, when would you start to trademark? Maybe.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So trademarking, if you can do it right away, you should. There's a few different ways on how you trademark. You can trademark your logo, which is like a mark, or you can trademark your name. But if you have an idea that you know, like I wanna commit to this, I think it's a viable thing. I want to protect myself. I want to prevent other people from coming in and taking this name. Go in there and try and secure it early on. Before you even do that, I would scour the internet. Type in, let's say, like for example, I was Bobo Design Studio. I Googled Bobo Design Studio and I couldn't find it anywhere. I went on Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, and I put in Bobo Design Studio to see if anyone had that handle. If someone had the handle, then I'd be like, okay, maybe somebody has this. And I just kind of like work my way backwards. So, you know, before you commit to a name, because imagine if I had said, I'm going to be Bobo Design Studio, and 3 years in, I'm making all this product and, you know, maybe things took off and I got all this recognition. And there's a Bobo Design Studio in Oklahoma that's like, hey, wait a minute, we've been doing this for 10 years. So now we're going to come and collect everything you've ever earned because you're infringing on our space. So, you know, do your research, know what's out there, and then make sure that like you can slowly kind of grab everything. A really good piece of advice that somebody told me is, if you have your name locked in and you know you want it, every social media platform that it exists, whether you're going to use it or not, take the name, sign up, create an account, and secure the name, even if you never used it, because that will prevent someone else from using it, building a business with that name, and then creating confusion in the marketplace.
On that note, Angie, Hyperactive Monkey, like you said, right out the gate, I trademarked it, and you know, I got all the social media handles except for Instagram, because Instagram was new at the time, and I remember trying to get it, and it was like this, seriously, like a 13-year-old girl in like like Norway or something. And every day, seriously, for like a year, I was like, she's not posting. I think she's gonna give it up. So for like every day for a year, I was checking her Instagram, and I was probably like a stalker. It's very bizarre, but like sure enough, one day it was like, this is a bit no user. And I was like, that second, I was like, I'm taking it. And I remember. So it's like Angie says, it's just that preventive measure. Like you don't want someone to take what you own, you know? And I thought that was just like, I remember just so upset that I didn't have that Instagram handle, Hyperactive Monkey. And then for a year, I was like, just clicking on her Instagram every day. And then finally just one day, it's like, no user found. I was like, oh, I gotta get it. And so I was able to get it. But just that kind of,
you can ask too. Like, yeah, I actually had the same thing with Facebook. I wanted to secure it. Somebody already had the name, but it didn't look like they were doing anything with it. And I just kind of figured out their email because I didn't want to do it over Facebook. But basically figured out who they were. They were a company in the UK, and I just emailed them and was like, hey, I noticed that you guys have this thing, and I'm in the United States. I would love it if you're not really using it. And she was really generous, but I also had like $1 in mind. Like if it came to the point where she's like, sure, I'll sell it to you. And knowing that I didn't really have a lot of money, but being prepared for like a plan A, B, C, and D. But she was really gracious and she gave it to me, and she's actually bought stuff for me, which is pretty cool. So
that 14-year-old girl in Norway didn't charge me or anything.
And how do you price that? Aside from people who like, you know, there are some who buy domain names just to try to make a lot of money. But in a situation like that where it's like somebody's not really using it, you know, what does seem reasonable? Or is that something you're willing to share?
I mean, I literally was like, I can part with $300. There was no strategy behind it. I don't know if there is like a price, you know, and obviously this person wasn't really doing anything with it. They didn't have like a really sophisticated website. So I knew it was just probably another hobby. I think when you get into this area of like, I think about the HBO show Silicon Valley and like going to procure another brand's name, you know, that might be a little bit more of, you know, a stickier situation. But I just figured like, this is worth it to me. And, you know, if not, I'll just add an underscore, do whatever thing that I had to do to secure my Facebook name. But yeah, just ask. Like there's always another human being on the other side. And if they say no, then you can kind of figure out what you need to do next.
And then one thing I kind of wanted to ask was about like, when it comes to creative rights, especially, I guess, in the creative realm, there's often really sticky situations because people will say, well, that's inspired by that. But sometimes it does look like an exact copy, right? So, you know, how do you deal with issues like that where it's like, well, you know, we have very similar styles, or no, you pretty much did just draw what I drew and then tried to monetize it. You know, how do you deal with those situations, or is there any recourse on those situations?
Well, I mean, copycats is a thing.
Yeah.
And it sucks. It feels really crummy to see like a weird version of your work on someone else's feed and like no credit, no nothing, and people are fawning over it. I've had that happen, you know, probably several dozen times of people tagging me and other artists' work that is clearly like a replication of mine. But I think as an artist, like no one can really recreate what you do, right? And if you have a strong brand and you have a strong brand voice, people are always going to know what the original is. But from a legal standpoint, it gets a little bit tricky. You know, you can file for copyrights for different designs. You can do a batch order of copywriting. You hire an IP attorney and they file that for you based on the origin of the creation that you made. And then there's nuances and like, you know, like a 10% alter. It's designed to be confusing. I think you know, that's lawyers for you. But as far as like, let's say like another organization, like, you know, Cost Plus World Market is a great example. I love Cost Plus World Market. I have a love-hate relationship with them because I love to shop there, but they are pretty notorious for taking artists' work. independent artists' work. And, they have a lot of slush funds designed to protect themselves so that when they do steal work, it's really like a dime in the bucket for them. But there's a lot of good resources out there. There's one called Kiffany Stahl of the JD, Kiffany Stahl JD, and she is an artist lawyer, and she has a whole section of free material on what to do if there is a copycat, and how to approach it, what kind of language do you use, who you can reach out to, what not to do, because I think the first thing people want to do is put them on blast publicly. So, there's definitely like ways to approach it, but I think above all else, just know that like it's going to feel crummy and it will probably happen. I'm sure like Addi, it's probably happened to you. You have like amazing work, and I can only imagine that people see that and feel inspired and are going to like try and recreate that. And then sometimes you do that, like even all of us have probably done it as artists, like you can't remember the origin of inspiration and you make something not realizing it's actually something identical to what you've seen before. But it's like, how do you navigate that conversation when it gets presented in front of you is really the difference between handling it professionally and like, kind of losing your cool and doing things the wrong way.
Yeah. I, knock on wood, I have not been alerted to my stuff being copied anywhere. And I always fear the day that I guess like make it enough that happens. For some reason, I'm not too concerned with, someone who's learning how to draw and they reference my work and they take a lot of pride in it and they share it on Instagram. Obviously, I'd want them to, come be, be clean about it and just say like, I was inspired by this particular piece, and that's fine. But, it breaks my heart every time I see another maker friend say, well, Anthropologie is selling this pin, and here's my pin that I designed 5 years ago. And you can like overlay them and they're exactly the same. That always breaks my heart. And I just, I fear the day that would ever happen to me. And I hope it never does. I don't have as much experience on the legal side of this as Angie does, but the one thing that I think I'm really good at that will always protect me is, post your stuff on social media. And then when you have that timestamp, that's evidence for you. That's a way for you to protect yourself, to be able to say, no, I posted this first, or I created this thing first. I've heard of something called the poor man's copyright, where if you don't want to post your artwork on social media, you take a photo of it and then email it to yourself, and that's a timestamp right there. I also, I have everything. As soon as I take a photo of it, I upload it to the cloud, and I have timestamps. Everything is organized really neatly for me. So in a way, I feel like I can sleep a little bit easy, knowing that if anyone were to come to me and say, that your thing looks very similar to theirs, you probably copied, I can just go scroll. Actually, I did that in 2015. So that's my only advice, because I really don't have a lot of experience in this particular sphere.
That's actually like really, really good advice.
It's a good idea.
I know you do it. Yeah, you do a lot of like non-digital work. So it's like, how do you like go back and archive like based off date? Like I do everything digitally. So for me, it's like in every file is the start date is embedded in there. So that's smart to like take a photo and think about that.
And then
poor
Angie,
man's copyright.
Sorry. Angie, what was the name of that resource that you mentioned again? I was trying to find it, but I don't think I heard it correctly.
Yeah, so it's Kiffany, so it's like Tiffany but with a K. Okay. Kiffany Stahl, I think it's Stahl, and it's like the artist's JD. And she's got a bunch of contracts, all sorts of stuff that you can go up there and purchase, like templates and a blog, Law Advice. She does like, I don't know if she still does it, but she used to do like every other Friday would do like live webinars for free that you could go in and ask any copyright or IP related questions for your artist-based business. And she focuses solely on makers and artists.
Awesome. Okay. I put that in the chat. And then there was a question about how do you keep track of your spending and budget? Do you all have like a preferred method, a preferred software?
I mean, I just have a spreadsheet in Excel that has, you know, lists the costs, you know, how much I sell. I try to, that's the one thing I did learn is trying to keep track of inventory and what you sell. And because, you know, that was another thing. You have to report your income. I was like, what, taxes? What?
And maybe tell people in case they don't know, just in terms of the tax concern, like, how much are you putting aside, or are you putting things aside from each sale?
I'm trying to. It's difficult, but yeah. I mean, again, I'm fortunate that, I mean, full disclosure, Hyperactive Monkey, you know, is like an expensive hobby. It's really the freelance work that I do for other big toy companies that allows me to do Hyperactive Monkey and fund those things and pay those things called taxes and recoup costs or whatnot.
Yeah, I same as Jerome. It's just a spreadsheet in Google Drive that I can just update as soon as, you know, even if someone is commissioning me and they pay me through Venmo, I can just on my phone, like, okay, I made $50 on this one. It's not very sophisticated, but at least at the very end, you know, I'm not a math person. I can click the top of that column and it tells me how much everything added up to at the end of the year. So that's really nifty. I did, I think one year I tried QuickBooks, and that was nice, but it was just another thing that, like, a spreadsheet was just as good. So
just like more than what you needed for your purposes.
Yeah, and it was also asking me things like, you know, like, what's the square footage of your studio space, and you can, because it's connected to TurboTax and Intuit, the whole suite, and it was definitely a little bit more complicated than I needed it to be, with like, okay, what make and model is your car, and figure out your mileage, and then start expensing your mileage. And I'm like, okay, I could do that, but I don't want to. And like the farthest show that I'll ever drive to is an hour away. So it's not like I'm doing like transcontinental journeys. Yeah, I'd say just a good old spreadsheet. It's really helpful.
I am so dumb when it comes to money. Like I'm the person that writes math in the line of the receipt where you're supposed to write tip. Like, you're supposed to do the math and figure out. I just sometimes will write math in there, and I just round up, and I'm like, just make the total bill $36. I don't know how much. Don't make me count with my fingers. If I don't have my phone on me with a calculator, I like literally don't know how to do anything. I am so dumb when it comes to numbers. So with that said, for many years, I was paying for QuickBooks like a big girl, never touched it, never used it, because I just did not understand, kind of like what Addi said. Like, I opened it up and I was like, what are all of these words? What are all of these lines? What is a balance sheet? Like, I don't know. But you know what? I'll pay for this because you can expense it. Like, also not knowing what that meant. Like, oh, I'll just expense it. Like, it's free. But I learned very quickly that, you know, my form of accounting was, if there's a positive number in my bank account, I must be making money. Yeah, no. So I learned very quickly, like, hire for the things you don't know how to do if you can. So I hired a bookkeeper, and there's nothing more empowering than like really knowing your numbers and knowing what something actually costs. I'm a big stickler for pricing strategy, which has helped me be a lot better about my own accounting finances, so that I know exactly, you know, how much something is going to cost for me to make and how much profit I'm going to make off of that sale. And then what's also really great is if you have an e-commerce store. So if you're on Shopify, if you're on Wix or WooCommerce, Squarespace, whatever it is that you have as your e-commerce platform, or that you're going to be processing payments through, they can all sync into your Shopify, PayPal. And so if you have an accountant that you can work with, or if you're savvy enough to kind of figure out how to kind of keep track of all of those different channels of which you're creating sales, it puts it all into one place, and then it kind of spits it out a report nice and easy, so that at the end of the year, when you file your taxes, you have everything kind of encompassed. And then if you get into any kind of retail sales or selling, you've got to file your sales tax quarterly. And so kind of knowing how do you do that, and where do I get these numbers that they're asking me for? Like, I still don't really understand how all that works. I'm pretty confident I've overpaid for many, many years, because again, it's like, I'll overpay or I'll go to jail. Like, okay, I'll just overpay. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. So hiring an accountant has been really helpful for me, but it's also good because it's educated me on like what is actually happening in my business. So when you think about finances, you know, it's good to, like, you know, if you feel empowered to work off of a spreadsheet and you're really confident in doing that, like, that's a fantastic way. And if you're not, get some help, because the last thing you want to do is get in trouble with your finances and then you have no business.
Awesome. And then there was a question that kind of also touched a little bit, especially Jerome, what you mentioned earlier. It says, many creatives do freelancing and commissions. How does that align with your business?
I think, you know, I mean, there's no real issue unless it's, for me at least, it's like I create Hyperactive Monkey characters, which are like, you know, Kung Fu monkeys and ninja monkeys, completely unrelated to, you know, my freelance job in terms of, you know, something licensed, whether it be from Star Wars, Disney, or whatever. But I think kind of like Angie touched on it earlier is, you know, I worked a full-time job, and I was like, I'm going to quit because I don't like to answer emails. I want the free creative spirit of life. And it's like, I don't know, there's something about that, at least for me, is like the freelance, okay, at least, you know, it's work and I enjoy it, but it is work. And it's something about like powering through that. And then, okay, I'm going to do 100% on my freelance. And then, you know, I'm going to spend an extra 2 hours just on a personal project every night. It kind of fuels me to like, okay, I'm going to be, you know, just keep going higher and higher. And so that I kind of use it as that kind of motivation. And a lot of times it just keeps me relevant also on what trends are. Like, you know, working with a lot of entertainment companies, that's like, oh, okay, I see what children like, you know, and what they're gravitating towards, what's popular in pop culture. So that's how it's kind of aligned with my personal work. I mean, I guess I hope that answers the question.
I'm similar in that I have like this service-based business where I do illustration and commission and client work. And then I have this very like boxed in like stationery brand that does like travel related stuff. And so as far as like how I structure the business, they're basically two different businesses. So when I'm looking at my finances and stuff, I think of it as the service side, and then I think of it as the product side, even though the service side, much like Jerome, fuels my ability to create new product financially. I really do like look at those two things differently. And I also, they're almost like two different brands, right? Like everything that I create as far as client work is not necessarily travel inspired work. You know, a lot of it is working with other brands. So I have to create, you know, commercial ready work for them. So just kind of like knowing where to divide your time is also really important. As an artist, you guys know, the only commodity is time. So like you can't create more hours in the day, unlike product where you can create more product and expand your offerings. If you're only a one person, you can't really diversify your time outside of what's available in a day. So knowing how to, you know, manage that time and not over extenuate yourself, which also is like baked into like your pricing strategy. If you price really appropriately, you're not going to burn yourself on both ends. So, but yeah, it's kind of like a balancing act of knowing how to present the two, knowing that they're going to be separate entities, but at the end of the day, still fueling the business as one.
I realized that I didn't mention this when I introduced myself, but to be fully transparent, I actually do still work with the company that I had started as a receptionist. I don't know if you can hear my dog mooing in the background. So I actually do still work, much like Angie was saying, try to keep your job as long as possible. The truth is I'm very, very fortunate. I love where I work, and I love the team that I work with. That is honestly what has stopped me from taking that really like beautiful Hollywood glamour moment of, I quit, I'm gonna pursue my dreams. I can't do it because I really like the people that I work with. But it's because I have that, and because I have that safety net and the health insurance. that I don't have to make my art answer to somebody else. I don't have to take on commissions. I don't have to do freelance. So I'm being perfectly transparent here that me keeping my job allows me to be able to say no to projects, and to not be in a position where if a pitch is not quite in alignment with how I want my portfolio to look, that I never feel like I have to go, okay, but I'll do it, but maybe I won't add that to my Instagram. Like I don't ever have to feel that way. Not that you guys, I mean, the things that you've listed and the things that I know in your accolades are just incredible. And Jerome, especially, I wish he could show us, because I'm a big Star Wars and Disney fan. Yeah, that's kind of a big thing for me is I do still work, and it does allow me to afford the ability to say no to projects.
Great, thank you. And let's see, I've got a couple more questions and we can wrap up. There is a question that somebody's wondering if, because you mentioned studios, if any of you are in like actual art, in an art studio or in a space, and if that is affordable or if it's difficult to come by.
I'm in a studio space. I don't know where the individual asked their question or where they're from.
Just the Bay Area.
So the Bay Area is tough. Yeah. One thing that's really cool is studio space for artists, pending availability, like supply, like they can actually be pretty affordable because most of the spaces are garbage. Like,
no lighting, no air conditioning, no heating.
Yeah, and it's not a luxurious office space, and that there's a lot of things that impact price of commercial space. One is the zoning, what is it permitted for? If it's permitted for retail, it's going to be very expensive. If it's permitted as industrial, it can be very expensive. But if you're just getting like a little studio that you can either share with other people or get on your own, it's quite affordable. It's hard to find it because usually if an artist finds a space, they'll try and stay there as long as possible because it's just such a pain to move. Can you imagine moving like 14 boxes of markers and all that stuff and like trying, like it's just so hard. Like any craft or any maker, it's like there were hoarders. You can't just move stuff every year or every 3 years, whatever your lease is. So a really good place to go is depending where you are in the Bay Area, any artist collective. So like in San Jose, we have San Jose Made. So there's a lot of other artists. The actual San Jose Made organization kind of knows what's going on as far as real estate. So you always people that you can ask. There's always Craigslist. Definitely get in with a few other makers. That's probably been like the best thing for me. So I had a storefront for a while. And when I left the storefront, prior to that, I was just working by myself out of my home. And having then had the storefront and leaving, I was like, I can't go back to being by myself because there's just so much you get from being around other people and like the resources and sharing ideas. It's that, water cooler talk. Like a lot of you who probably have like 9-to-5 jobs that are working from home remotely, like sort of hate it, right? Like you like can't wait to go back into the office when it's safe and just like have coworkers to talk to. And so for me, that was really important. So I found 2 other local artists, Genevieve Santos of Le Petit Elephant and Angie Chua of The Little Red House. And the 3 of us actually share a studio space together. And it's great because when we're all in, we can kind of share ideas and we can collaborate and share vendors, talk about packaging. We can share the help if we're all feeling really overwhelmed. So there's lots of different ways to go about it from a financial perspective. But, if you find a really good rate that's affordable for you, talk to the landlord and see if you can secure like a 3-year lease and keep that rate really low. And then once you kind of start building rapport and learning about other artists and other spaces, then you can kind of capitalize when you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you. And then I think I kind of just want to see if there are any other like best practices or lessons that you've learned that you want to share. And maybe this has to do with, getting your name out there or, virtual and physical sales, especially right now with virtual really being the main source of anything. as exemplified by us being here virtually. Anything you can share about best practices? And I think earlier we were having a discussion about like wholesaling. You know, what are these things that you feel like people need to know, but it's hard to find out. And, you know, even if there are those networks that you should be looking to, that you can recommend.
I can start with some recommendations because while they're in my head now, because the ADHD is like, think about nachos and other things. Okay, so going back to like finances, Profit First. It's a book. I can't remember who the author is, but it's really good about how do you make money, and then how do you know how much to save for taxes? Are you going to pay yourself? How much money can you afford for supplies? So it's a really good book. I read it. I listened to it on audio tape or audiobook. That's a really fantastic resource. If you're a product-based brand, so you do anything that's a physical product, check out Lucky Break Consulting. So I did a lot of work with them. Leela Barker, who was my mentor for several years before I actually ended up working with them, is fantastic. So Lucky Break Consulting. And then there was one other book that I wanted to recommend. Lisa Congdon. She is an artist out of Portland. She's amazing. She's 50 something. She never even picked up an art tool until she was 38. She had no art background, no business background. She, you know, had a really troubled youth growing up, and she has built a global brand just all by herself, creating some like really fun and quirky work. But she's come out with several really easy to read books, kind of on like how to be an artist and how to survive. And she talks a lot about like, you need 7 different channels of income to kind of survive. So she does, you know, webinars, she does workshops, she makes products, she, you know, does licensed work. So it's kind of that. And for me, I know with a lot of us, how many different ways can we make money? So like, you know, for me, it's like, I got the product, I have the service, I have a Patreon, I've got, you know, I do workshops. So I'm trying to find all these different ways that I can fill and inject my business with income so that I can survive. But those are my favorite resources to kind of start.
I was just about to mention Patreon as this incredible resource. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Patreon, and it's really only in the last couple of years that it's now a word that people are kind of going, wait, I think I've heard that before. What is that? If you're a maker or if you're a creator of any kind, and I'm so sorry, my dog is so vocal all of a sudden. He's usually not this way. Patreon is a really, really good resource for you to stay connected to the people who really believe in what you're doing and just want to support you. And you can just, you are in complete control of how much content you're putting on your Patreon. So I know for myself, I was very overwhelmed when I was even thinking of opening one, because I was like, am I going to be so caught up in just mailing things to people that I'll just never have time to create? It's like, no, you could control that. You have absolute control over the sliding scale of what you owe people. Patreon, other sort of like passive income things like Redbubble, Society6, and those are actually, that I really, really relied on those in my first 2 years or so, because you're not paying for overhead. You are not paying to manufacture a minimum order of 1,000 coffee mugs and then being stuck with 998 coffee mugs in your home, or having to pay for storage for those coffee mugs. You know, it's a third party where you just upload the artwork and they'll take care of it for you and ship it to the customer. They also will handle all the customer interaction for you. So making sure that you take advantage of those types of websites as well, if the stuff that you're creating can be applied to that. And also Kickstarter, I have done it twice now and it's amazing. Similar to Patreon, it's people who believe in what you want to make. You can kind of think of it, they're not so much like a customer buying a product, but an investor who's backing. or fronting you the money, I should say, to make the product. And then in return, you give them the product. So all of those avenues, I think, have been really, really helpful resources to get started without having to input too much of your own funds right off the bat.
And could I ask real quick, in terms of like Redbubble and those, do you have one that you feel has been a better experience that you would recommend?
So I have a Redbubble. I don't have a Society 6, and I'm trying to remember why, because I remember comparing them. And I think at the time, Redbubble just had different item offerings that I thought my artwork would look better on this stuff than this stuff. Mm-hmm. I also have an in-print shop, which I try to drive all of my print sales through that, because I think that the quality of prints that they do is really, really good. But you know, for swag like stickers and cell phone cases, and weirdly enough, like leggings, I could have my artwork printed on leggings, but I definitely toggled that product off because my stuff does not look good on leggings. So right now I have a Redbubble, but I think I need to revisit Society 6 just because I'm sure it's been a little while.
And I did notice imprint seems to be better quality, and I see more artists who are a little higher scale go to imprint as well. Okay, Jerome?
I think, I don't know if it's specific, but Addi and Angie really touched upon it, is being accessible, especially since we're on social media. My wife's always yelling at me like, hey, stop looking at your phone at dinner. But it's like, people are like commenting on like direct messaging, like, where'd you get this made? How did you get this made? And even at conventions, I'm 100% honest of where I get things and how things get made. And I've noticed that a lot of times, like, what that leads to is bigger opportunities, or just helping out someone and they remember you and they purchase them for you. But I remember like at Comic-Con one year, I had my booth there and someone walked by. It's like, how do you make all this? And I was like, whoa, that's like such an ambiguous kind of large question. But I'm like, I'll take the time and tell him. And then he's like, oh, I'm a buyer for Shoe Palace and Nice Kicks. Would you come down to our office in Morgan Hill and give us a talk? We have the Back to the Future license and we kind of like to see how we can pursue it. And, I took that meeting. I'm like, holy cow. Like, and what happened was the project kind of got shifted and became an art show. But the funny thing is they remembered me the next year for Transformers. So we did this whole capsule line of clothing for Nice Kicks. And I thought that was just being accessible and kind of just helping out other people, if they have questions, because that's how I got where I'd always ask other toy designers, or if I saw a cool t-shirt, I'd be like, where'd you get that printed? How does this, how does silk screening work? And they were always very kind. I think like Addi said, don't just be like, what are your vendors? Give me all your lists. I mean, be cordial, be respectful, but I think being accessible goes a long way, especially on social media. And it's just, I think that's like what my kind of best practice is, and putting yourself out there in a nice way too.
I like that. I feel like you like teed that up for me, because I just had this conversation with another person. And someone asked me like, how do you always get on the right side of all these, like recently it on paper, it looks like, oh my God, Angie's doing all this cool stuff that I worked like so hard to get to, like the Paper Source thing, for example. And I'm a mixed book artist, which is they're based out of Redwood City. They make photo books, and I'm a designer for them. And I do stuff for Inkbox, which is a tattoo thing. And they're like, how do you get all of these deals? Like, and at the end of the day, I am a fartist. Like, I am not the best artist. I'm not the best lettering artist. I have no knowledge in typography, like theory. I don't know color theory. I just am like committed to what I create. But I think the most important thing that has really propelled my business is that you don't have to be the best at creating something. You just have to be really easy to work with. And you have to really care about what you create and care about what other people are presenting to you, and be invested and care about their ideas too, and truly collaborate. Because I know as artists, we hold our style, our aesthetic, our vision very tightly. But sometimes when you want to expand and collaborate with other brands, other artists, other businesses, you know, you got to be able to have that that give and take. And so for me, it's not always about being the best at something, because I am far from it. It's about you know, being authentic and being fun to work with, easy to work with, and delivering every time. So that's a really important thing. And as that pertains to like product, so if you're a maker or an artist, you want to create product, there's a really fine line between procrastination and perfection. And the more that you procrastinate thinking you just have to make it perfect, it pushes out your ability to actually get your product out to launch. And you want to strike when you can. And while you always want to make the best product to sell, sometimes you want to just get it done, because odds are you can spend a lot of time on all of these little details and put it out there, and it turns out it's not viable, or people have this feedback and they want you to change things. And while you shouldn't listen to every piece of feedback, you should also know like what feedback is actually good feedback and what should you change. So sometimes it's good to just put something out there, even if it's not perfect, knowing that you can iterate on that later and then expand. And then that's a really good way to get people to come back. Like, hey, people, you guys bought this thing, but guess what? It's new and improved. I listened to your feedback, and get them to reinvest again. Especially if those people were maybe like not so thrilled with the product, but hearing that you're listening to them and making changes, and knowing that you can put your ego aside to continue to improve on what you create is a good thing.
Awesome. And there was a really nice comment from somebody who's familiar with all of you. It said, hi, Jerome, can't wait to make cookies for you again. Hi, Angie, I took your chalk art class a bit ago, using your lessons to write with icing on cakes and cookies. And hi, Addi, I love my chalk back. It's so beautiful. So that's really nice. And I mean, I think that also speaks to the art community in the Bay Area, and how small it almost is. It's huge, but it's small, because I will meet people and they will know each other, and I'm like, how do you know each other? And I think it speaks to the network portion, right? So, I mean, are there certain networks that you would want to go to, or is it kind of just reach out, meet people, talk to them without being annoying, you know? Is there a way to compensate people for their time? You know, what would you say?
You know,
Oh no, go ahead, Jerome. I interrupted you the first time.
I think, you know, I think again, you can approach me any in person. I think the number one thing is like, you know, if we do an art show, for example, you know, that's a great way to meet someone you admire who has show support. You know, even if you can't physically or don't have the money to buy anything, support them if they have an art show. Follow them. Really, you know, drop a comment on in their Instagram or Facebook. You know, that honestly goes a long way. Like, I mean, especially during like quarantine, like I'm going nutso in here, you know, and if someone says like, dude, I love this drawing, and like that means a lot, you know, that really makes my day, you know. I think, you know, for me that it could be as simple as that.
Yeah, I absolutely feel that. I feel like every time I get a comment on something, I'm like, human interaction, please talk to me. Talk to me, tiny magical square. I think for networking, the thing that I struggled with in the beginning, and a lot of this has to do with the imposter syndrome, and also remembering, you know, just how cool all of my peers were in school, and like they do so well in the critiques, and mine would be like, it's okay. And I'd go to these art shows, even art shows where I had stuff on the wall. So I was among them, but you know, they'd be walking by and they'd have their cool like bow ties and their cool mustaches, and they'd be very fashionable. And I'm just standing there like, oh my God, everyone in this room is so cool. And I am so out of my league here. I don't even know what to say. I just want to go hide in the bathroom and eat my lunch, just like high school. And, you know, really just put your ego aside and, you know, stand next to someone and be like, is this one yours? I really like it. And come up with, you know, an authentic reason of why you like it. Like you did, like the shapes are really cool, or, you know, I love the motion that you've created with this line here. And strike up a conversation that way. You know, if you're in an art fair or like a craft fair, if you can get away from your booth walk around, introduce yourself, get to know the people there. And I promise you, you will start to see the same faces at art fairs, and try your best to remember them, or at least remember their products. I care more when people go, oh my God, I've seen your stuff before. And I'm like, great, like I'm anonymous, but the fact that you recognize my dog making coffee, that's gold for me. I will live off of that forever. And I promise you, you'll be able to make friends very quickly, and then they'll happily share resources with you.
Addi, about your imposter syndrome. That's how I felt when Elaine reached out to me. It's like, do you want to be on a panel with Addi and Angie? I'm like, no, I'm not worthy. I don't want. I'm gonna sit in the corner. Just no video chat, no mute, like everything on me. I'm just silence.
So funny, because during one of our art shows, somebody's like, Jerome is involved in so many more toys than any of us know. Like, and like that, you know, that man is so like such a big deal in the toy industry, and so I'm glad that you're here and and speaking.
It really just goes to show that we all have imposter syndrome, and no one has found the cure for it. You could be in any corner of this industry at any stage of your career, and you're all going to think that you don't belong, which just shows that you belong.
And it kind of keeps you going, right? It kind of keeps you, it's when you're too confident, maybe things don't work out so well. Okay, Angie.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, if you feel like you are at the pinnacle and you are the best, like, okay, that's you're not. Everyone, there's always room for improvement. But I'm a firm believer in that nobody knows anything. Like, nobody knows what they're doing, and it looks like you do on the outside. And I used to think, like, every mistake that I made, I'm like, it's got to get easier. Like, this is just going to eventually get easier. Like, I'm going to have all the answers and it's going to get easier. And it doesn't. Like, the problems just get more complex. And so, like anything, it just comes with experience. So it's one of those things where there's no right or wrong way to do something. And so therefore, like, there's a billion ways to do something, and there's a billion ways to do something wrong. And you just have to figure out, like, how you choose to navigate those waters, whether it's leveraging friends, whether it's, you know, gritting your teeth and doing it alone, whether it's, you know, finding other online groups, or, you know, just getting out of your comfort zone, like Addi said, and like introducing yourself to other people, because at the end of the day, we are all human beings. We all have our own insecurities. And, you know, if you can just muster up a little bit of courage to extend out, and don't be afraid to ask questions, or don't be afraid to introduce yourself. It's really remarkable, like, the kind of barriers that can come down for your business or your artwork by just kind of making yourself a little bit more available and connecting with others. Because yeah, nobody knows what they're doing. So everyone cannot know what they're doing together.
Awesome. All right. So last thing to wrap up, where can we find you? And is there, with the exemption of everybody here, another creator you would suggest that we check out who you look to for tips and tricks? Sorry, was that a hard one? That was a hard one.
I think we're all like, who goes first this time? I'm trying to remember who went first last time.
I'm gonna say, yeah, Addi, go ahead.
I guess I'll start. So you can find me at a Miyako M on Instagram and Facebook, and also my website, a Miyako M at Instagram, Facebook, and my website. I know people think it means my name is Amia or Ami or Amy. I get it, but it's my handle. I picked it. It's mine. I get a lot of people going, oh my gosh, are you Ami Yakom? And almost. And another artist that I would recommend is Zai Devecha. She is in San Francisco, and she actually used to be a welder and would do these incredible, like, two-dimensional welding pieces with different tones of metal, and it would look like a ribbon, like 3-dimensionally folding, yet it was 2-dimensional. And then one day she just decided, I don't want to do metal anymore. Let's try paper. And she creates these stunning, like powerful yet quiet paper pieces. And she and I connect a lot. And every time one of us comes up against something and we're like, hey, have you ever had to deal with something? Have you ever had to write a contract for something? Can I pick your brain? We bounce ideas off each other all the time.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Jerome?
All right. You can find me at hyperactivemonkey.com. I'll do the Instagram. My Instagram is JRoMonkey, JRO Monkey, because Hyperactive Monkey, which I do have, but it's not up to date because I got later because of that 14-year-old in Norway. I wasn't able to secure, but you can check out me there and you can see all my stuff. I guess my favorite art, like artists I really look at, I'll say, there's being in the Bay Area, there's Tony Bui. He's a San Jose artist, and he would kill me because he's always like, give me a shout out. So that's the shout out. I love his art. He's a funny guy. He's a good friend. I talk to him every day on Discord. We talk about Ninja Turtles and just really obscure memes and Travis Scott Happy Meals. So there you go. There you go, Tony Bui.
I love Tony. He's like the coolest person ever. Yeah. See, I don't have the luxury of getting to talk to him every day. I'm a huge fan of his work. We run into each other and a few times, but you'll have to tell him I said hi. Also, you can change your Instagram handles. So if you were thinking about it, if you secure the other one, you can swap them. But you can message me if you're interested in doing that. I can let you know how that goes. But what was the question? Oh, who am I and where you can find me?
Who are you? And then who could you recommend as like an awesome person to look to?
Okay, so you can find me at Bobo Design Studio. It's BOBO Design Studio. So design is singular on Instagram, patreon.com/Bobo Design Studio. And I do like all sorts of stuff. I have a podcast. I do monthly rewards, giveaways, all sorts of fun stuff there. Instagram, Bobo Design Studio, and then my website, bobodesignstudio.com. And then I'm not sure how much they share as far as being like a pinnacle of resources for the community, but my studio mates are like the most amazing people. So Le Petit Elephant, which is Genevieve Santos. She is incredible, like just an incredible artist. She does Filipina themed art, and she does like these like rice cooker ceramics, which are like impossible to get a hold of.
Very hard to get.
Having to like just steal them. I mean, I'm about to just steal them from her.
I might ask you to do that for me too. I'll just wait.
Angie, do I
just like against the wall?
Do I Venmo you money?
Yeah, do we all just? We'll all go visit Angie. They're very different. Her people are so fast.
It's borderline like annoying how amazing, talented she is. And then you have to like fight the rest of the world to get her stuff. So she's one. Everyone absolutely should go and follow her. The other one is Aggie Chung of The Little Red House. She actually is a little bit better. Not a little bit better, I should say, but she talks a lot about kind of her creative process and the manufacturing process. And she's helped me so much with my stationery line. She helped me a lot with, figuring out how to navigate this paper source deal that I had, but she also has a Patreon. And so she's really good about sharing that information there. And for those of you who are, we talked a little bit about Patreon, but it's a great place for us to monetize our knowledge. So sometimes when people like to ask a lot of questions on things that I've spent a good amount of my time trying to figure out, I always just say, hey, come hang out on Patreon, $3 a month. I'm happy to share whatever kind of information you seek out. So check her out. And then, of course, the two on this panel, like, holy cow, like, I think the three of us together, we are like one really good business. With our powers combined.
No, you're each a great business.
We're not quite like a full Voltron though. I think we need.
Yeah. Well, your dog is definitely.
Oh yes, he would be the head.
Yeah.
He would be the head.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again so much. That was so much information. I'm sure we could continue to ask you things, which is why I asked, how do you not be annoying to ask for information? I have been sticking a survey link in the chat. If y'all wouldn't mind, please fill that out to let us know what we can do for you as a library. If this is information that you want more of in some way, whatever that is. And of course, we have many books at the library that have to do with starting things like LLCs and small business taxes, really the fun side. But we also have a lot of other fun creative stuff. But yeah, I just want to thank you all again for being here with us. This was really wonderful. It's too bad we couldn't stream to Facebook Live, but it's on YouTube Live, and I'm recording it, so I will get it up there as well. So you all can share it with other people too later on if you'd like. Okay? I think that's it. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a good Monday night.
Thanks,
Everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Are we still streaming?